House Oversight Committee is escalating its tactics in the Epstein investigation. On Friday, the panel issued 2 subpoenas to Leon Black. That's the billionaire who once knew and employed Jeffrey Epstein. This comes after Black abruptly ended the interview behind closed doors after he refused to answer questions regarding non-disclosure agreements he potentially signed with women, some of whom have been linked to Epstein. The top Republican and Democrat on the committee say they believe the NDAs are vital and central to this investigation. We must note, though, that Black has denied any knowledge of Epstein's criminal activity. Democratic Congressman Ro Khanna joins us now. He sits, of course, on the House Oversight and Armed Services Committees. Congressman, it's good to have you on the show tonight. So let's just begin with what the heck happened in that closed-door hearing. Set the scene for us.
Leon Black acted outrageously. He was hiding behind NDAs he had signed with women involved in the entire Epstein saga. The Republicans, Chairman Comer said, well, tell us about these NDAs. He refused to do that. The Republican chair said, well, we will subpoena that you need to produce that and need to tell us about it. And he said, refused to do that, and he walked out. But here is the biggest issue. Why is it that the Congress is doing this, and why has Black not been investigated by the Justice Department? The survivors I talked to, the survivors' lawyers I talked to, the first name they mentioned is Leon Black. And it is outrageous that this Justice Department, after all that is out there, has failed to investigate him.
So, Congressman, tell us about why Leon Black was brought in here in the first place. What is it that you felt and other members of Congress felt that Leon Black knows that might be important enough for the investigation, why you believe the DOJ should be investigating him or trying to get answers to what he might know about Epstein?
Well, he allegedly gave over $170 million to Epstein. So at a basic level, why was he providing so much financial support for Epstein or payment to Epstein? Moreover, a lot of the survivors' lawyers have made serious allegations about his behavior towards women. And that we'd know more about it through the NDAs, but we would know more about it through an investigation. The problem is that the Justice Department has refused to meet with a lot of the survivors or the survivors' lawyers, something that Thomas Massie and I have requested repeatedly.
Congressman, I want to ask you about some of the commentary around the divide within the Democratic Party right now and the I don't know if they're surprising, but the recent election results here in New York, in which some DSA candidates dislodged some incumbent Democrats. Tom Malinowski, who himself recently lost in a primary, but he's your colleague in Congress, had a series of tweets in which he was critical, actually, of the leadership of the progressive wing of the Democratic Party. I'll read you from some of that. He's talking about some of the unwillingness to criticize, for example, Daria-Lisa Chevalier, who won one of these primaries. He says, young Dems voted for Avila Chevalier not because they knew her, they didn't, but because leaders like Mamdani and Sanders embraced her. Those leaders could have chosen a serious progressive with non-insane views. They chose this. The result is the mirror image of MAGA. It doesn't matter if candidates are qualified or what their beliefs are. All that matters is that they're on the team backed by its leader. Anyone who questions that is slated for the next political destruction. Nothing wrong with leaders on the left wanting to push the party leftward, but true courage in this moment on the left and right is not taking on the establishment. That's easy. It's setting limits for your side and telling your followers what they don't want to hear. So I'm curious if you agree with that assessment that it has been difficult at times right now to say things that are at odds with one's own faction within the Democratic Party. Are there things that you agree with Malinowski that progressives may not want to hear that they should hear if they want to win elections, for example?
Catherine, first of all, the Democratic primary voters are much more unified than the media narrative. They're unified that we want single-payer health care and that the current healthcare system is broken. They're unified that we have an unfair and lopsided economy and that we actually need to have a wealth tax on billionaires. They're unified that we should never have had these foreign wars in Iraq, Iran, and that we should never have allowed for the bombing and genocide in Gaza, and that it is outrageous that we gave so much aid to Israel while our own communities are suffering and aren't having economic development. Those are the issues that are motivating Democratic primary voters around the country. And I would say that it's far more difficult to stand up to an establishment that basically has presided over the decline of the American dream than it is to do anything else. I mean, that's standing up to economic power, to corporate power, to special interests, to PACs. And that's what you see these candidates doing. Now, do I agree with every one of the tweets or past statements of these candidates? Of course not. I've always supported secure borders. I have, of course, support law enforcement and the enforcement of the law. And I will make my positions clear. But it is awfully hypocritical for Republicans who have given such a pass to all their members to go cherry pick the random statements of candidates as opposed to focusing on their central message.
To be clear, this was not a Republican. This was Tom Malinowski, who's your Democratic colleague in the House.
Well, I think that Tom's missing the bigger picture, which is that these candidates aren't winning because of idiosyncratic views that I would disagree with. They're winning because they're standing up for Medicare for all. They're standing up and calling out the genocide in Gaza. They're standing up and saying no aid to Israel. They're standing up and saying we're going to tax billionaires. They're standing up and saying that the American dream isn't working for young Americans. And people see them willing to fight for that and not kowtow to an establishment that has lost to Donald Trump twice and that has presided over the decline of the American dream. Look, the generation in charge is not the greatest generation. It's a failed generation of political leadership. By definition, they've given us 2 Trump terms and 80% of Americans think the American dream is dead. And what these candidates are showing is that the party wants a new direction. Now, I would be happy to answer any specific questions of where I stand on any errant tweet that a candidate has put out. And I think it's incumbent on all of us to be very clear where we stand. But people who are looking at those errant tweets are missing the organizing and why they won.
Congressman, I'm glad you brought up specifics because let's do specifics. With Graham Plattner, you have answered some questions about it, and you have said that the allegations are upsetting and disturbing, but it's not enough for you to disavow endorsing him. When is it enough when it comes to a woman who says that she has been a victim of abuse reported by a credible newspaper? What's the line with you? I'm just curious because in the years since Justice Brett Kavanaugh's hearing, the lines seem to have really moved for Democrats.
Well, of course, I take sexual abuse and sexual assault very seriously. I mean, I led with Thomas Massie the entire Epstein files. And I think if you talk to survivors who were crying in my office, they would say that I have really taken that issue very personally and fought at great risk to my own career for that issue. I had called immediately for the resignation of Eric Swalwell and supported him withdrawing from the race. I believe any form of sexual assault, sexual violence, domestic violence is something that is not forgivable for a political candidate. And like Elizabeth Warren, like Bernie Sanders, like others, I've said if that actually, if there's reporting about that and that happened, then I would withdraw an endorsement. But what we have seen, as Senator Warren and others have said, are toxic relationships where there was misogyny. And that's unacceptable, but that Plattner has taken responsibility for that. And we will see. Of course, I believe his message is resonating in Maine. But if there was some credible accusation or allegation of sexual assault, domestic violence, rape, I would withdraw my endorsement.
Congressman, let me get your final thoughts, if I can, on some reporting from The Intercept that talked about how I believe the Congress is looking to permanently integrate U.S. and Israeli defense technology in AI and autonomous systems. You have been outspoken against this proposal. Tell us why, if you can briefly, you think Congress should not pass this and why this would be detrimental.
Look, there are two things that are unifying Democrats and Republicans right now. One is taking on the Epstein files and corruption in many cases, and the other is getting out of these foreign wars. And part of getting out of those foreign wars is to stop supporting Israel that has committed a genocide with billions of dollars that should be spent on America. You have young voters under 50 who overwhelmingly believe that. Many of them voted for Thomas Massie, and many of them voting on our side. This provision would basically cede our sovereignty. We don't have this with any other country, and integrate U.S. and Israeli militaries. It is nothing to do even with what you think about Israel. It's, do you believe that the American president should call the shots? I mean, Israel is a country with less than 1% of global GDP. They need to defer to America, not treat themselves as co-equals. And Massie, by the way, has an amendment that's coming up to zero out funding for Israel. Every Democrat should support it. The establishment is out of touch of where the Democratic primary voting base is on the issue of Israel's genocide and support. And they'll see that in the 26 and 28 elections.
Congressman Ro Khanna, thanks so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you.